About to get into a conversation now on abuse of state power, of course, with Hussein Khalid, as you had earlier said. I want to welcome him first and thank him for the amazing work he's doing. Karibu sana, Hussein.
Thank you so much, and really appreciate being here. And looking forward to the discussion.
Before anything else, Jano has a quote for you.
We have the quote for today. Usually it's people who are known for doing quotes. This time I picked it from one of our fixers, actually one of our viewers. And there's a time he said, Kenya would be a superpower if all factors were constant. And that really stood out to me when he left it in the comment section. Kenya would be a superpower if all factors were constant. What's the first thing that comes to mind, Hussein, when you hear that? When you hear Kenya can be a superpower, and when he says all factors, what does that land? What does factors mean for you?
Thank you. And I totally agree with the statement of the day, because we know that as a country, we have a lot of potential. If you just look across the region, Kenya has, set the trend in many ways. It's not just about economy, but also in terms of democracy, in terms of human rights, rule of law. As a country, I believe we have the potential that we need to become a superpower. And what is really lacking is leadership that can take us to that stage. And I think that's the crux of the matter, because if you look at what's happening presently in the country, from blood parliament to, continued killings in Narok and other places, you'll find that we spend so much time dealing with issues that shouldn't be issues in the first place. And if we had that time to actually concentrate on the matters that really need to be prioritized, then we would be so far ahead. So I totally agree with that, and I believe that potential is being maligned by leadership, and particularly political leadership. And if we can fix the political sector, I believe we'll be, right in front, if not the superpowers of this world.
In fact, Mariam was saying, even with Singapore, you'd be saying Singapore.
Sisi
tuko mbele.
Exactly.
Because they love to compare us.
They love to compare it to Singapore. We were once at the same place. Eric is with us. I know soon he'll have to dash off to fix the nation outside. And, we can just bring you in now, Eric. You've heard kind of how Hussein has responded to the quote, how it sits with him. And obviously, this is a conversation we've been saying we'll have with him, with everything that's happened this week, right, Eric?
Oh, yes. And Hussein, it's good to see you. Good to see all the work that you keep doing at Vocal Africa, and previously all the other assignments that you've held. And I like your interpretation of it. And the way you've said, if we fix this, if we can fix our systems, like our police service, that's what we were discussing yesterday when Mariam Bishar said, miss me with that on this whole talk of police reforms every now and then, new task force, this and the other, then we would agreeably be, a superpower if we just sort out our issues. But it's like we just get caught up in this thing, Hussein, isn't it? We just get caught up in doing the one thing and the other. You've been in this forefront of pushing and advocating human rights. When you look back, when you woke up this morning, look back at the very many years that you've done human rights work, whether it's with Muhuri at the coast and looking at human rights advocacy for the marginalized at the coast, whether it's looking at human rights advocacy now at a national level, even amplifying it. Do you feel like we move a needle, or do we just are we like, rats in a wheel?
I think it's both. The unfortunate thing is that we make 3, 4, 5 steps forward, and then we take a leap backwards. And presently, if you look at what happened last year, Latif, with the Gen Z protests, that was a game changer. And I believe that where we are as a nation now, we can never go back. People say we are going back to the dark days of Moi era and all that. But if you look at what happened last year with the Gen Zs, it's a game changer, and we're definitely never going back to those days. Kenyans are now awake. Kenyans are now, taking charge of their affairs, and they cannot allow, whether it's politicians or the state or any other person, to take us back to where we were. So in terms of moving forward, that was monumental. It was historic, that young Kenyans took charge of the nation. But then, very good, important steps forward. And then you have the issue of accountability, impunity in this country. again, the political leadership taking us leaps actually backwards. And you know, I think I was just listening to the discussion with the Parliament's statements yesterday. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that you have such individuals, you know, considered as leaders in this country. Kenyans have died. At Parliament, the records that we have on that day, there were 9 people who were shot dead, actually. Well, 6 were shot dead and 3 were clobbered, you know. And we were at the morgue the day after, you know, looking at the pictures and looking at everything. There was a 16-year-old, I believe, he was 16, who was beaten, you know, by police. And these are issues that are supposed to be at the core of leadership. You're supposed to stand up and say, never again. Let's make sure we get these individuals. But then, as we say, these leaders are perpetuating impunity. What we're telling the police is that, look, you can continue doing this and we'll stand by you. And that's not the leadership that we want to see in this country. I think those guys should be embarrassed, you know, and we just need to make sure that such statements are never heard in this country, because it's really, really sad if you are a family member listening to what these parliamentarians are saying. It's just out of this world.
I don't know how to hold them accountable for these statements, but I want justice for every person who was killed, every person who was hurt, every family that is going through a loss right now. You've been in this space for a long time, especially working at the coast and other marginalized areas. You've seen abuse of state power in many, many shapes and forms. What's the evolution? What has it looked like over the years? Because, you know, some people are always getting smarter, unfortunately. What has it looked like and how has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, okay. So when I started doing this in the, I think just after the post-election violence, you know, around 2010, and then we went to Parliament with Occupy Parliament, with MPs and all that. I think back then there were a few individuals who had the courage to come out and call out the atrocities that were being committed against the masses. Right. And at that time, it was specifically on issues to do with crime, but then also violent extremism. So it was challenging at that point in time, because these were individuals who were considered largely, you know, to be engaged in unlawful activities. So our message was that, yes, indeed, we need to investigate. Yes, we need to get criminals out of the way. I mean, we don't want criminals running around our communities and all that. But then we were very clear that this has to be done within the confines of the law. You can't just suspect someone, you know, go and shoot them and stuff like that. So we were insisting that, you know, police have to abide by the law, and the law is very clear that you arrest the individual, you carry out your investigations, you present them in court with the evidence that you have, and then you allow the courts to do their work. Everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty by the courts, not by police, not by communities. I mean, we might have seen someone snatching someone's bag and running away, but that person, maybe it's his bag. Maybe it could be like, you know, if you go to court, evidence is adduced, and then the magistrate can confirm guilt or otherwise, and then the person, you know, serves their time in jail. So we were very clear that, you know, the police cannot be the ones, you know, arresting and then also making decisions. And at that time, they used to call it funga file, because they said the judiciary is corrupt. So even if we present these people in court and, you know, the judiciary will just release them. But we said, look, the law is the law. You have to apply the law at all times. So what we have seen now is that that situation has metamorphosized. Now it's no longer, killings are not just related to criminals. I mean, Eric Shieni, Erickson, and David Chege, those are not criminals. And the 6 others who were shot on that day, Ibrahim Kamau and others. It's really difficult for us who've been out here, and we've always like insisted, we need the people to come out. We need the masses to stand up and say enough is enough. We need, because it was a few of us at that time, when we saw the young generation coming out, the Gen Zs, and saying, look, we need change. Coming out with a constitution, a flag, and a bottle of water. Saying you want your country to be a better place. but only to be met by a sniper's bullet. And now we know who these people are, the ones who shot this individual, at least the 3 guys. So it's disheartening to see that we've reached here as a nation. We keep saying everyone needs to get involved. Security starts with you. Parliament is our building. You know, we had protests on 18th, we had protests on 20th, but the leaders were not listening.
Right.
They went ahead and said we are going to vote for this. So we felt, why don't we go to Parliament and tell these guys off? It's a public space. People go there every day, people needing help, even children from schools, primary students go to Parliament. You know, so they're trying to make it look like people wanted to take over. Yes, we don't encourage the vandalism that was witnessed there, but that's no reason for you to justify killings in that magnitude.
And to only look at that within the bigger scope of the fact that, like you've spoken, those who've died. You know, there's so much I think you can walk us through over the next hour and a half as we have you, Hussein. But I also want to go back to the civil society demanding for the arrest of the killer officers. We acknowledge the investigations update released by IPOA and call on the ODPP to release a statement on the status and progress of prosecutions underway related to June 25th, 2024. Where do we stand with that now? This was said just yesterday. I know you've been, again, a part of really calling for that. Mariam has asked a good question, which is, you know, what does it look like then? What does it look like now? What do you think it'll take? Because this isn't the first time that either civil society or the public has demanded for the arrest of these officers. What do you think needs to happen following this demand? What do you want to see happen immediately?
Number one, and very, very important, we need the people to stand with the families of the victims. And we want to tell politicians, because they keep saying we had forgotten, we are reopening wounds and stuff like that. We have not forgotten. And we will never forget. And these are not wounds that are being reopened. These are wounds that were already open. And no one had actually done anything on those wounds. So for us, it was real, because we live with these families almost on a daily basis. It is so, you know, Kennedy's mother, Kennedy is the young 12-year-old who was shot in Rongai, cries to this date when she looks at the pictures that her son used to sketch on his exercise book. You know, you have Ibrahim Kamau's mother. Every other week, she would call to find out, has IPOA done anything on my son's case? Ibrahim was shot in front of Parliament. You know, we have, you know, David Chege's family. They work together. They have a family lawyer who pushes for these issues. So Parliament, they're so detached with the reality on the ground. And to them, it's like we have moved on. We have never moved on. 65 is not just a number. Those are people, young Kenyans, majority who were killed. You know, 9 in Parliament, 56 across the country. We've been visiting some of these families because some of the guys who were killed were the breadwinners. You have a wife with 3 kids in Likoni in Mombasa. She actually does not know even where to start. You know, and there are many other cases, and you know, it's so ironic that leaders would now claim to care when they have absolutely no idea of the plight that, you know, these families are going through. And we want to say it very clearly. The first responsibility lies on the masses, on the people. The first step, if you want these institutions to work, the people must speak, and must speak extremely loudly. We want to thank BBC. Forget about our leaders, our politicians. They are absolutely out of line. We thank you, BBC, for airing, you know, Blood Parliament. We thank everyone who was involved with that, and we must demand accountability. And we're asking the people, number one, to be very loud about it. Today, it is David Chege's family. Tomorrow, it might be mine, or it might be yours. And if we remain quiet, then they will come for us. So that's the first step, sorry. The second step, we must reach out to these institutions. We wrote a letter on the same day when Blood Parliament was released to the ODPP, and telling them that you must take action. Failure to which you stand to attract more public anger. And when that happens, please don't start blaming people for your failure to act on issues that are very clear, because all the evidence is there. The only thing that was lacking was who did it. Right. And thanks to BBC, now we know that. So these are some of the steps that can be taken.
I wanted to bring in Eric just before we lose him, because I don't know when we're going to lose him, and while we have him. Again, Eric, to just respond to what Hussein has said, and I know at some point we also want to talk a little bit about what Yugen Ambeka uncovered, which is, again, in fact, when I was speaking to Hussein, he said it's enforced disappearances, but then you told me it's arbitrary arrests, which I think I want to... Also arbitrary arrests. Yes. So just bringing you in, Eric, as you're listening to kind of, Hussein speaking to the demands of civil society, but also speaking to the volition is also on us as the Kenyan public.
Yeah, I like the way, Hussein, you're threading it and saying this is what we've seen happening in the past, and this is the journey that we've been making, but we are not yet there. And there's a lot that all of us ought to do, and all of us, yes, ought to stand with our families. The families of those who died, those who are still missing, those who still haven't found their loved ones since last year's protests. But at the same time, there's the call for accountability. Hussein, yesterday we were talking about all these institutions that we created with our constitution. So we've got what should have been an independent policing service. We should have had an oversight mechanism that is comprised of civilians in terms of the National Police Service Commission, a civilian one. IPOA is a civilian-led oversighting agency. We have human rights, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. We've got the Gender Commission. So we have created all these institutions, but yet we still are here. And that's why we're saying today, lest we forget, we still have an abuse of power by the state. How do we check the state against abusing power? 15 years ago, when we promulgated our constitution, the whole idea was that finally we have institutions that are going to check the state, and we have citizens that are going to enjoy the benefits of it. How do we bring this back? How do we make sure that our institutions are serving us?
Yeah, that's really a good question, Latif. And I think we have a very good constitution. What we need to do is to apply constitutionalism. And I always say this, what lets down Kenyans at this point in time are always the politicians. It's the politicians who try to dilute the constitution, who try to dilute the rule of law because they want to perpetuate themselves in power. Today, you have a commission, Independent Policing Oversight Authority, KNCHR, the ones that you've mentioned. And when you speak to them, they'll tell you that, they have resources from government, from the exchequer, mainly for administrative purposes. But in terms of programming, like to do the actual work, to get boots on the ground, there are no resources for that. So what you have is a situation where the political class want to tell us there is IPOA. There's KNCHR. The government spokesman will say, we have institutions that are supposed to do their work. But then you don't resource them to actually get to the ground to do the work. So you give them administrative resources, you pay rent, you pay salaries so that they're there. Your flower girls, and you can always point fingers at them. Right. But then you deliberately starve them of resources that they can use to go to the ground. Today, Vocal Africa, we are even more visible on the ground. We are, in different places more than IPOA. We have to call IPOA and tell them there is A, B, C, D, you should be here. The National Commission, we have to call them to tell them, please come down. That shouldn't be the case. We are paying taxes, and these taxes are not supposed to go towards, paying, for the first lady and stuff like that. They're supposed to serve the masses. And the masses, it's through these institutions, independent institutions that are supposed to work, but they're not working. So they're just, meant to hoodwink the public that the government cares, we have these institutions, they're in place, but in actual sense, Latif, the real work that is supposed to be done by these institutions is not being done. So we thank IPOA with the resources that they have, for giving us that list. I think in most cases, the numbers that they released yesterday are similar to what we have, to a large extent, not fully, but to a large extent. And we expect now to see action. That's why we wrote to the ODPP, and we told him, the ball is now on your court, and we need to see action.
You
see, Hussein, just to come in.
Yes.
Sorry, Mariam.
No worries.
I just want to follow up on this, Hussein.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can see the problem is the centralists in politics who still want to retain all the power, who still want to retain all the say. But we as the citizens, because we are the sovereign, what can we do? What should we do to remove that power and move it from the politicians? They keep coming back. The Vibarak, I call them, the Vibarakas in the National Assembly are serving the political class. How do we then regain our power and make our institutions work for us?
Excellent question, Latif. And the Constitution has the answer for that. The Constitution says that sovereignty belongs to the people. And they may exercise that sovereignty either, it says either, through elected representatives or by themselves. And I think time and again we have seen that our elected representatives represent their personal selfish interests. They don't represent the wishes of the masses. And I think the time has come for us now to exercise the either and tell people we must get these individuals. And I like what the Gen Z is doing. That's why I'm saying I'm happy that we've made this step last year and that we are never going to go back. We already have details of these individual officers. People are already, doing the background work. This is exercising sovereignty by yourself, because if you've handed over the powers to institutions, the police, the IPOA, the ODPP, and they're not exercising the mandate given to them, then you take back that mandate and you do it yourself. So for me, the answer to that, Latif, is that the time has come for us to now exercise our sovereignty by ourselves. Take the action. We're not saying that abuse the law or take the law into your own hands, but we must move the wheel of justice. And we start moving one wheel, that wheel of the masses, and then all the other wheels, because it's a clog, they will move. For many years, we've been, trying to target institutions, tell them to do this and to do that. And you know what, last year, we actually realized if you empower the people, if the people take charge, these institutions will have no other choice but to work. So that, for me, would be the key issue.
Right. I'm looking at our YouTube fixers saying basically, first of all, Janet, thank you for picking that quote. Hussein gave it justice. That's Lenny. And he also says when addressing them, it should be not leaders, but just politicians, which is very, very true. And someone is saying, my prince says he heard his member of parliament saying, I vote yes to the finance bill 2024. And I think a lot of people felt the same way. You hear this person, you see them, you know what everyone has been telling them, but they're moving very differently. Even as we do seek to address and to use our sovereignty, these elected representatives still wield a lot of power, a lot of influence. And sometimes that's the hurdle, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
It's that I want to push the needle, but the person pushing back has the state behind them.
Yeah.
That's how do we get through that part?
I think, as I say again, last year is a perfect example of how we can deal with such issues. Because the people spoke, and they spoke loudly. Reject finance bill. I don't think at any point in time in Kenya, people, aired their opinions more than they did last year. And, it was so loud. Across the country, it wasn't just a Nairobi issue where, we were being told people with iPhones going to places with Ubers. We saw people, even in the remotest parts. In Garissa, there were protests. In Elbagon and in other places, people were calling, asking for posters so that we can go out and say we reject the finance bill. So people spoke so loudly. But what did our representatives do? They continued insisting that they will pass the finance bill. So these are not, I agree with the guy who said, these are not leaders. Let's just call them for what they are. They're politicians. And in Kenya, politicians are only there for their personal gains. I mean, we have a situation where people are telling you, this is the way. We voted for you. You are our representative. You're not supposed to represent your own personal views. You're supposed to represent our views. And we're telling you this is the way. And they went the other direction. So for me, the answer, take back your power. Sovereignty, the constitution is very clear. It can be, you can exercise your sovereignty either through your representatives or by yourselves. And that's what Kenyans did.
That's what Kenyans did. I know we're going into a break. Gosh, there's so much to come to. Land rights, because you were just saying that that's something that you're currently working on. Femicide, justice for these 60 names, Vocal Africa. We need to come back. It's 7:30. We have in studio with us Hussein Khalid, who is with Vocal Africa, and we're just reflecting on Blood Parliament, the BBC documentary that once again brought to the fore everything that happened on June 25th, but this time giving justice to the victims. We'll be back after this break. Also engage with us on social media. This is Fixing the Nation. Tangoja, we shall see. We can come back. We still have Hussein Khalid in the studio with us, but we have some of your feedback on YouTube, and then there's also on X and other platforms. So Judith Kirorei, she says, thank you for highlighting the unfortunate events. We are once again mourning our son and all the fallen heroes. She also goes on to say, this is the lady who Janet calls a teacher. Unfortunately, I'm not a teacher, but a lover of Kenya. I am an auntie to the late Eric Sheni, who we fondly called Erico. Judith, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you for just being a fixer. We see your spirit. We see you when you send in your videos. Thank you for just being a true citizen of Kenya. We really appreciate you. Yes, I think there's a lot of other people who are coming in. McCoy, one password official, with all the pictures and videos in place. Still, our leaders respond like they don't care. Sometimes I wonder if we elect people or something else.
Or something else there. I think it's important, first of all, Judith, sending so much love your way, and to every other family member, friend of someone who lost their lives during June 25th protest or subsequently after, someone who is still recovering from injury, because sometimes we think of injury as like, oh, they're alive, but they could be dealing with lifelong changes. They're not, their lives will never be the same. The cost of that, the emotional weight of that, the ability to work may have been taken away. Even if it was a minor injury, we're still sending you so much love. And that's why we're doing this Lest We Forget, because these are real lives. 60 is too many. One is too many. One person injured is too many. So that's why we have to continue this conversation. And we're still with Hussein Khalid, of course, and we'll be talking about the other types of abuse of state power that we've seen and how it's threaded. But just a little feedback from our X page. Game Changer says, it pains me when I think of those people who are maimed, or the families of those who lost their loved ones by death, or who are missing to date. Looking at us and seeing that we backed down and wondering, why had we bothered if we were to stop midway? And I think that's a valid sentiment that a lot of people have, but have we really stopped midway? Or is it just a different momentum, a different strategy, a different way of doing things? Because I don't want to see Kenyans lose their lives. And if the state's reaction is going to be violence, I think it's okay for us to re-strategize. Khalid, what do you think about that? Yeah,
I totally agree. First of all, just to let people know, we've not stopped. Kenyans have not stopped. The struggle for a free Kenya continues. We just need to take stock of the gains we've made. And I think last year we were very successful in defeating, not leaders, as we've agreed now. They're not leaders, they're politicians. In their masses, those who are for the finance bill. I think that's a huge step that we have shown to the world, and not just to ourselves, but to the whole world, that the people, as we've said in Article 1.2 of the Constitution, can exercise their sovereignty directly, and we were able to stop the finance bill. Not only were we able to do that, we were also able to have the cabinet dismissed. Fine, most of them
found their way back,
but never has that happened in the history of this country as a result of pressure by the masses. It's always for political expediency and all that. So we have to take note of that. Number 3, we were able to get the government to make huge steps in terms of cutting down. From the number of parastatals to, projects that were not within Kenya's priority list, First Lady's budget and stuff like that. So for us to be able to move forward, we have to take note of the gains that we have made, because that will encourage us. If we say we've stopped and we've not been able to achieve, then it looks like, we've not done anything. But we have to believe in the powers that we have as a people, and to realize that we have changed this country for good, and we want to continue in that change process, because change is not an event. It's an ongoing process. And there are many, many things, promises that were made, and more importantly, promises that were made to the families of the victims. Not a single one has been made. Not a single police officer, despite the overwhelming evidence, has been arrested and charged in court. Yes, IPOA has done its bit, ODPP is doing its bit, but at the end of the day, no one has been held accountable. We have an inquiry, Rex Masai. We're going back to court on 12th. Yes. Evans Kiratu and others who are all, killed during the protests. But as it stands presently, no single officer has been held to account. 65 Kenyans were killed. We have the post-mortem reports, clear evidence. People who were shot at point-blank range. Ibrahim Kamau had 2 shots to the neck, and exited on the other side. We have people who were shot, and then police picked the bodies, took them to the morgue, and gave an account that they died from road accidents on the opposite side of town. Someone killed in Rongai, Shakil, and you take them to the morgue and you say it's an accident victim from Juja.
Right.
Completely, the evidence is overwhelming. What I don't understand is how you sleep at night as a leader, knowing that you have the power to bring justice to Evans Kiratu's mother. Evans Kiratu, when we called the mom to tell her we have some sad news about your son, she didn't want to believe it. Who are you? No, my son is fine. I left him, I just helped him. He just moved into his own house like a month earlier. And I was like, no. It's until we were able to take him to them, and she didn't cry. To take her, sorry. She didn't cry. She didn't even shed a tear until the day we've done the postmortem. Now the body's in the coffin. Now they're like doing the round, past at the morgue, so that we can put the coffin in the vehicle and take it home. She just broke down. I don't know if you remember that video. She screamed and she was wailing, and I still remember that. And you couldn't hold back tears, because she has been so strong throughout. And then at the last minute, now she's like realizing, seeing the son in the coffin. That's at that point is when she realized my boy is gone. Yeah. And she wailed, like you could hear that. I'm sure we were at Kenyatta Hospital. I think even the hostels came to see hostels could hear that wailing. It was really like you just couldn't believe it, and you're in a position where you can bring justice to this woman. This is the same family that were arrested when we were protesting. You remember, and then she was saying, you are arresting me and you have killed my son, and you sit in an office. You are Kipchumba Murkomen, you are the cabinet secretary for interior. You have all the powers to bring justice to this family. You are the president of this country. All you have to do is give directions that let the responsible officer carry their own cross. You are the Inspector General of Police in this country. You have all the capacity to ensure justice is done, and you do absolutely nothing. How do you sleep at night?
And there's another justice factor, Hussein, because you're also, first of all, I'm still processing what you're saying, but today you're also going to be carrying out a post-mortem, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
We are proceeding to Narok, actually Kilgoris, where the bodies of the 5 individuals who were shot dead in the land tussle in Narok are kept, and we are expecting to do the autopsies of the 5. And from what we hear, the preliminary findings, of course, the post-mortem will give the final conclusion that majority of them have headshots, clearly pointing out that whoever was shooting, the intention was to kill. It was not to, disable or anything of that nature. It was to kill. So hopefully we get the results of the autopsies, and then we begin the quest for justice.
It's heavy. We've talked about this before, Mariam, just the weight of what Hussein has to do.
Right. And I wanted to know, I have 2 questions, and they're not related, but bear with me. One, Hussein, it's incredibly hard work that you do. And we spoke to Hanifa just the other day, and I asked her how she was. And I want to know how you are as well, because you're going to a postmortem today, to several actually. What you're going to be seeing is not anything that we should be seeing, but someone has to stand there and witness for those families. You see it day in, day out. You go to funerals, you grieve with families, you are there in the heat of the moment. How are you?
Yeah, it's it's not easy. If I remember David Chege's autopsy, the results, the doctor said the skull was empty, because the shot completely fractured the skull, and it was open, the wound was open. I don't know if people remember the pictures. There was some liquid oozing from the head, and I apologize for the graphic explanation of what happened. And the autopsy was, there was nothing inside, because the bullet was completely, and you're there imagining, what wrong did this guy do? All he wanted was a better Kenya, armed with a flag and a bottle of water. That's it. And he's no more. And you're there with the family, and, they're crying and, just wondering why. But what we tried to tell them is that, please, this was not in vain. And please don't blame him in your hearts. Just know that he died a hero. And that's the message we were trying to send when we were going to funerals. We didn't want people to feel like, because sometimes you would hear the mothers wailing, I told him not to go out. I told him to stay. They're there at the morgue. They're crying and they're saying, why did he have to do? So we have to go and console them and tell them, look, he had to do this. And he's done this for you and for me. And it's not all in vain. These are heroes. So when we were going to drop the coffins with the flag, we received threats. We received threats from the authorities. I don't know, only army officers, only police officers. I'm like, these are more than army and police officers. They paid with their lives so that we can have change in our country. In fact, if we could do 10 flags, we should have done that. And we insisted, and we told the families, these are heroes. Please remember them as such. Don't remember them as, they didn't listen to you as a mom and all that. They did this for all of us. Right. So it's not easy, going through all this. I know, for most of our staff, we have to do, regular debriefing and, so that we can keep up. But in most cases, the families cannot witness. I can imagine someone you've known, you've grown up with, and you see them in that state, and the autopsy is going to be done. But so we have to be there so that we can collect the evidence. They can have confidence that the autopsy was done well. We had our representative, and these are the findings. And more so because in most cases, the autopsy is done by government pathologists. So you have to be sure that the results that are being given truly reflect the true situation. So we have to be there for them, but more importantly, we have to be there so that we can have the evidence. I know it may seem like we keep repeating this and we do the evidence collection and everything and nothing happens. But I believe someday, and soon for that matter, justice will be done. These officers who are in balaclavas and all that, they will be revealed. Wherever they are, let them know that you can't run away from justice forever.
Yeah, we're pursuing
One
justice.
day we'll have a president, we'll have a regime that will say, we must bring justice to the masses, to the people, and they will be held to account.
We need to push for that. Eric, a few minutes to the break, just want to bring you in. I think it's so critical, the question Mariam asked, just speaking to that, we see the work, we see the press conferences, but speaking to the person behind the work, just your reflections on what Hussein has said, as hopefully in the next hour we also navigate and get into other state abuses, whether it's land rights or femicide. But just your reflections, Latif.
I think when I just heard what Hussein was saying and reflecting on what Hanifa was saying earlier, I think, Janet, just brings you back to what you keep saying. How do we identify people like Hussein, and how do we lend our support? So not all of us have the bandwidth to spend our day, travel to Narok today. Tomorrow, Hussein will be elsewhere, and he'll be in court on this date. He even has the dates, in his head. How do we lend our support to people like Hussein, not just financially, morally, showing up when we need to show up, so that then we support them to help us, call everybody to account? Remember, today we're saying, lest we forget, despite all the efforts that we've made, we still see abuses of power by those in positions of authority. And people like Hussein Khalid and the others, think about Irongo Houghton at Amnesty and the others, Boniface Mwangi and others, all these people and institutions and organizations that are actually doing a lot of work. Kenya Human Rights Commission, that are doing a lot of work, is just, doing the civic duty in terms of civil society. I think my reflection is, how can we rally as a nation to lend our support to people like you, Hussein? And maybe you can just respond to this, because granted, not all of us have the bandwidth to go to court today, to go to Narok tomorrow, to do this and the other, but how can we support?
Thank you, Eric. Just before we go on the break, I think I wanted to figure out accountability from a bigger perspective, because I do want to see the officers shown in that documentary in court. I do want to see them face justice, and not just them, but every other officer or law or security agent who shot at someone who was unarmed, who used excessive force. I would love to see that, but they take their orders from somewhere, and it's a rot. How do we see justice go beyond just them? Because at the end of the day, even if we do manage to for example, sentence 1 or 2, 3 police officers, as long as there is still abuse of state power, then we'll still have that problem.
I agree.
Oh, just right, sorry, right before you answer, we have a caller coming in. I don't want them to drop.
Sure.
We have Mark Wekesa from Nevasha wants to chime in just before Hussein answers the question. Good morning, Mark.
I'm good. Niko salama kabisa.
Tuko salama.
Niko salama. Sasa mimi nasema hivi. Kama serikali inajua ya kwamba watu wenye waliua watu wanajulikana, kwa nini hawezi wakawachukulia hatua? Lazima wachukulie hatua. Angalia ndugu yetu, kila mara ni kwenda mojari, kutoka mojari kutembelea watu wenye wanazika. Yani hiyo mtu ni kujitolea. Hawezi wakaona utu ya huyo jamaa yetu kweli, na wakafanya favor, wakatoa watu wenye wanafanya nini, watu wenye waliua watu. Do you know? Serikali inajua, lakini sasa the problem is that wanataka kupeleka mambo opposite, up and down. This is not good. Wananchi wanaangalia. My brother, Mungu akubariki na atakuongezea miaka. Kazi yenye umefanya kusaidia Wakenya, Mungu atakuongezea miaka. Na Mungu abariki kizazi chako.
Asante.
Asante. Thank you so much, Mark. Asante sana. Pokezo Baraka Hussein.
Asante. I really appreciate that. And I think to begin with answering Latif's question, I think this is it. When people acknowledge, when people come to you and tell you thank you for the work that you're doing, I think that's what most of us, whether it's me or it's the Human Rights Commission, it's institutions, when people acknowledge that justice needs to be done, that for us is the most important bit. What we hear from our politicians and stuff like that is what we really hate. Let me just use that word, because it shows how detached they are. But in terms of ensuring accountability and that justice is done, I think that's the first step. Get the individual officers. I remember David Mudhui's case, the guy who was killed, was it last month, during the Majengo protests, the morning after. And the videos that went round was this officer dancing and celebrating right in front of the guy he's killed. You've shot someone dead there, and you're there, you're dancing, you're celebrating.
Yeah.
We have to get those people out. these if individual officers, you know, that responsibility as an individual, you've done that. That's the first step, because it sends a message that any other person who wants to do that will face the wrath of the law. You know, so that's the first step. But I agree, command responsibility, that you are the OCS of that station, that you're the OCPD or you're the county commander, because this is a disciplined force. The orders come from above, from above, from above. When I was arrested on October 20th, and I asked the officers, so why have you arrested me? They said, we are following orders from above. You are arresting me, and you're following orders from above. So where are you taking me? Because I was taken round, I don't know, took my phone, and, you know, I was really, really scared, because I was like, now, okay, today is my day, you know? And you ask them, why are you doing this? So where are you taking me? We don't know. So they're moving you around. Then they're waiting for orders to be told where to take him. And there has to be some level of responsibility. That officer, you know, and there were 3 officers in a Subaru, 4 actually. And, you know, the one who was giving them those orders, and he was waiting for orders from someone else, you know. So all these have to be held to account. And I hope that, you know, the time is coming soon, because we have to believe. If we really, when we started, we said we want to be Singapore and stuff like that, you cannot get there when impunity thrives in a country. The way to deal with this, if you speak recklessly in parliament, there has to be action. You know, if you speak recklessly in a public event, there has to be action. And if you're a police officer and you act recklessly, there has to be action.
Okay, we're coming up to the top of the hour, 8 a.m. You know, as you were speaking, I just remembered this quarry. You know, there's all of these unresolved matters. I'm curious to know how state abuse manifests when it comes to land rights, when it comes to the pursuit of justice in cases of femicide. We'll have another half hour with you. We hope we can get through all of that. But we do have in studio Hussein Khalid of Vocal Africa. 17 years of being at the front lines of pursuing human rights. That is a long time. He's already spoken to his experience. He's spoken to how difficult it is. And now we try and get into what does it mean to also pursue justice in other areas of state abuse. This is Fixing the Nation. Janet Bogwa, Eric Latif, Mariam Bisha. It's coming up to 8 a.m. We'll be back after this break. Somebody had actually sent me this yesterday when I talked about the fact that we'll be hosting you. And they said, please ask Hussein, what would it take for Kenya to truly reckon with past violence and state abuse? And they wanted you to allude to it with regards to even the land rights. I know you're doing a postmortem, several postmortem in Narok today. Is it specifically to seek justice for those who've been affected? Is there a broader issue there around land rights that you're also pursuing justice for?
Yeah, it's definitely a broader issue. And land matters, I think, in Kenya have been, you know, Kiswahili, sisi Mombasa, tusema donda sugu. You know, a problem that never seems to be dealt with. We're talking about Narok. 2 weeks ago, it was Kwale in Gasi. There were evictions, and, you know, luckily there were no deaths. Before that, it's in Eldoret, there were evictions. Before that, it was, you know, so land is a big problem in this country. And if you look at the crux of the matter is that you have a few individuals who, I don't know how much land someone really wants to own in this country. So you have people owning thousands and thousands of acres of land, and, you know, and people are living there. You have people who are even post-election violence 207 who've not been settled to this day, to this date. So when we follow up, particularly with the postmortems, it's just that the postmortems are very, you know, I would say emotional stuff, and for media coverage, it's also important to just confirm the cause of death. But in many cases, you have a story behind the killings. There's something that happened, you know, before we even go to the morgue. And land is one of the most pressing problems we have in this country. Many people, we have femicide, of course, now, which is also a major issue, but land has been there for decades, and we don't seem to resolve that.
Yeah, you've just touched on femicide.
Yeah.
Where do you see a common thread in the way injustices are excused? For example, our reaction to femicide, I can draw parallels to our reaction to femicide, by our, let me use the state's reaction to femicide, to the same way it reacts to enforced disappearances, abductions, etc. At first, it's ignoring. It's just hoping that this will die out and there'll be silence and we'll forget about it. It's silence, silence, silence until people come out, people shout, and then it's a change of tact. It's, oh, we formed a task force, we're now doing this and that. We are looking into, we do not participate in this and that. So it's always wait, just see if things, lull on their own and if people forget about it. And then when the pressure continues, that's when there's a reaction, which is often just a bandage, just a little a plaster there.
I think you're very right, and that's how it has been for quite a while. But I need to thank the Gen Zs, for trying to change that script, because for them it's not going away. Most of us, particularly our generation, that millennials before the Gen Zs, issues come up and they are the older generation, and after a while it disappears, it's no longer there. So the government knows we will have this and people will talk about it. After a week or two it will be forgotten. And what we are seeing now with the Gen Zs is that we will not forget. You don't forgive and forget and move on.
Right.
They want issues addressed, and for me it's so fulfilling. Like we finally got to that point where the masses, we have a generation that does not want to let go of injustices in this country. And we need to encourage them, because that's what Kenya should be. I mean, we began with the quote, Kenya would be a superpower if all factors were constant. And I think this is the most important factor, the sovereignty of the people, the exercise of that sovereignty in demanding justice. And this is what, for me, the political class do not understand. Majority of them are, I think, 50 and above and all that. And then you have the Gen Zs, the 20s and all that. There's such a huge disconnect. Yeah. That's why last year during the Maandamanos, they kept saying, bring your leaders so that we can sit and talk. We want to talk. But this generation is not about you already know what you're supposed to do. Yeah. What are we talking about? To have another MOU between ODM and to say human rights must be respected? We have a Bill of Rights in the Constitution. Exactly. What are we bonging? So you see, for us as millennials, we somehow we understand the Gen Zs because we have children. I have a teenager myself, so you can relate. But you see, our fathers, there is that disconnect. They don't understand, how are you protesting without leaders? It doesn't get to them, because to them, Ruto doesn't go to these places and they don't have money to give people. Someone is organizing. The local senator there has mobilized people. The governor has brought, so someone is bringing out the people. But for the Gen Zs, there's absolutely no one. You're leaving home, getting your own fare. You're actually asking your mother to give you fare, or you're saving and saying, this one, Tuesday, I'm going to town with your own money. So they say, no. Then it's Ford Foundation. No. It's Gachagua. No, because they're so disconnected with the Gen Zs, they don't understand. So that disconnect presently is the biggest issue. The moment they will realize that these are not your normal politicians that you can bring together and give them a seat here and a cabinet, that the better for them, because otherwise they will be pushed out. This sovereignty will be exercised.
I was going to say that. That's not a bad thing. I was like, let them continue to not understand, because that widening, that gap of not understanding where people are coming from is what has enabled us to do so much, because they don't get the motivation. They don't get that the motivation is actually wanting better, wanting accountability. And the minute that happens, I feel like if they click, then they're able to adjust.
So they should still continue being clueless, or they need to be clued in?
No, they should continue to be clueless, because then we make headway.
So
We
that
continue
by the
to
time till you're at the same table, you're like,
yeah,
umefika.
That's it.
Okay.
And it's like, how did we get here? Tulifikaje hapa?
Tulifikaje, it's because you only to assume.
You see, for them,
Yeah.
every presidency knows, I'll call this guy Kutatulia. But for this generation, there is no
There's
this guy.
to call. Yeah.
We want everyone to benefit. It's not about an individual or a party or, you know, a cabinet position or nusumkate. This generation is not about, it's all of us. We want each and everyone to benefit.
It's about equity. I wanted to ask you, just in line with that question, I think Mariam was asking in terms of response. I want to know also how they are dropping the ball on the response to femicide. I mean, it was so, oh gosh, it was infuriating to hear the CS say they need I know he's just reacted. They need an education. They need, you know, even wearing this T-shirt today.
They're doing this for money.
It's somehow,
they're doing this for money.
For money, yeah.
Like Hussein, just the same way we've talked about the pursuit of justice for the 60, and you've talked about how we need to be as vocal, we need to be collective. How can we also ensure that the 129 isn't just a number? And you're like,
129 is not just a number.
Because sometimes you just have to wake up and be like, man, she didn't wake up today. Just the same way Rex and all didn't wake up.
Exactly.
You know, you need that constant reminder that I'm breathing, I'm eating, I'm living, but they didn't get a chance to. And that's got to sit in your subconscious. But just as you're responding to updating, in fact, you can just give us an update of how you're also trying to make headway in addressing issues of femicide.
And not only did they not wake up, but their bodies are in pieces. And up to this day, lying in the bottom of a pit in Kware.
Oh, God.
You know, somewhere there. And this is exactly what the problem is with this nation, the political class. Someone makes such a reckless statement, they're doing this for the money. And the next day, the very next day, you approve them to be cabinet secretaries in this country.
For gender.
For gender. This is how low our parliament has gone. How do you do that? Because you want to please an individual who has nominated this person, and you want to look like, yes, I've done it. You forgot completely who put you in that position. So this is exactly the problem. This generation is so detached with what's happening on the ground. They don't understand, they don't fathom what people are, where the country is heading to. And for our women, I mean, it's just unimaginable, some of the things, you know, we get to hear and see. You know, if you take the case for Kware, it's the DCI that told us this guy had 42 women chopped into pieces and dumped, you know, at the Kware dump site. And you've come back to us, you told us that the pieces of bodies we have are of 17 women. So not complete, but they are, you know, they belong to 17 different women. According to your own statement, means 25 are still down there. 25. And you've completely abandoned the issue. You've even threatened the youth who are actually going down to remove those bodies, you know, and it's like you've forgotten everything about it. And then after everything, you come back and you tell Kenyans, oh, the suspect escaped.
Right.
That's how you end the matter. For you, the suspect escaped, we are looking for him, and that's it. So one day, I believe, there will come a day when these people will be held to account. So what happened? The suspect escaped. Why didn't you continue with the retrieval of bodies? Why didn't you pursue justice?
How did
I
they
hope
escape?
that day will come.
How did they escape?
How did they
We don't know
escape?
the
Who was
names.
responsible?
And
Is
we
it the
don't-
OCS?
Right.
Exactly.
Because someone is in charge.
Yeah.
Someone has the key to the door where these people, because it's in Gigiri. It's supposed to be one of the safest, the international, you know, police station around there. How does he escape? But no one has been held to account. No one has explained. And to date, they're still searching.
Yeah,
for
and
this
there's a petition to declare femicide a national crime, right? A national...
A crime, yes. I think it's to have it declared a crime separate from homicide. Yes.
Yeah.
So that I get that, because when you give something a name, you give it power.
Exactly.
Yes. But
Yeah. Just wanting to ask whether I'm just trying to see how we can also shift the needle when it comes to addressing femicide, because again, every time we make a few steps forward, we have somebody say they were looking for money. You make a few steps forward, you have somebody saying, oh, the person we had in custody has escaped us. And I think this petition, I believe it's being pushed by, Usikime, who've been at the front lines of addressing femicide. In just a sentence, Hussein, how do we also shift the needle, and from across, because I think it's a perception issue, it's a societal structure issue, it's a criminal issue. So how do we then say, in a few months, this is how we're going to continue to make sure that women and girls are protected in this country?
Number one, pass the law. Because when it's in law, then it is, you can adjudicate.
Right.
Yeah, you can go to court, you can have these issues addressed. So passing the law, number one, very key, very important. Number two, of course, it's public awareness. You see, the numbers that always come out are usually, just a tip of the iceberg. It means we have many more cases down here. And to some people, they don't even recognize that this is femicide. So let's raise awareness. If you look at the protests last year, everyone knew the finance bill. It was even translated into, mother tongues, and you're training your mom on what. So we need to do that. Let's talk about femicide. Let's make it everyone's problem. And number three, we have to fight impunity. When individuals are, accused of this femicide, they must have their day in court. Let's not allow people to walk scot-free. That impunity needs to be dealt with. And I think if we're able to do that and show examples that, this university guy had this girlfriend killed, put him in a septic tank or something like that, those issues have to be dealt with. And the perpetrators, charged in court and have to serve their terms in jail.
Right. And I think that petition is definitely a great start.
Definitely.
Because realizing that it's a problem, one, we're unable to differentiate between femicide and homicide. So we're not able to get then accurate statistics of how big a problem we're in. The issue of underreporting is also really huge. I want to get into some feedback that we're seeing on our YouTube page just before we wrap up the discussion. And I think not Trevant actually. This is he says there's something I need clarification on this adding a sub-county in Mandera. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But Samuel Njora says the debate in Parliament yesterday laid bare for everyone to see the politicians have moved on. If there will be any action, it will not come from politicians. That's very, very true. Douglas Musetti says, every time I remember June 25th, 2024, the Kahawa massacre, Zimmerman, Rungai, the abduction and murder incidents, I go mad. I find myself always crying. And it's true for so many other people. Lenny says it's alleged that police are moved from one place to another to carry out security measures, in quotes, and then back to their respective posts, e.g. the Nakuru Drama Festivals, and after that they are transferred. So they're speaking to, one, the pain that a lot of us are still carrying, those who are family members, those who are friends, those who lost loved ones, and just as an empathetic Kenyan, but also to the systemic rot and the systemic rot of the issue, like the problem. That's the real abuse of power.
It's true.
When we think of an ideal Kenya where the constitution is followed, a lot of people have talked about the independence of the police and the independence of IPOA. I think that would be now the ideal Kenya where those bodies function as is. From your experience, what curtails their independence? Is it money, politicians?
Number one is money. As I said earlier, there's money for admin, there's no money for programs. So we need that independence. We need the money to these institutions to move directly from the exchequer to them, not through line ministries, because it's the line ministries that then, curtail, their operations. If you want, you have to do this, you have to do that. But to the issue, to Parliament, we want to send this message very clearly to them. We have not moved on. We will not move on. The pain is real, and we want justice for the victims of Gen Z protests. Until that is done, until we get proper justice for those who are murdered by the police, by the regime, that issue will remain in the minds of Kenyans. So if they truly want us to move on, let us see those officers in the dock. Let them be charged for murder. Right. Let reparations for the families, for mothers and, and fathers, let that be done. Then we can talk about moving forward.
Yeah.
But before that, absolutely never moving on.
I think that's important because sometimes we see, and Mariam talked about it yesterday and she was saying, Miss Me, with that is, we're setting up a task force, we're setting this up, we're going to take action. But then the reforms are very performative. Yeah. And also sometimes you're even just shifting the same people. So how are you going to change anything? Just as we wind up, I'm also cognizant, there's a call that's come in. You said it's Jeffrey from Mombasa. Okay, Jeffrey from Mombasa. Geoffrey, thank you so much for joining us. Geoffrey, come on, Natupata. Please let us know what you'd like to share or something that you'd like to ask Hussein.
Thank you very much. My name is Geoffrey Amadi, as you've said. And I want to thank Mr. Khalid. He's actually doing a good job.
Thank you.
And I have seen you for many times since I came in Mombasa here. You've been trying to serve some people when the government do wrong to them. And I'm very much happy. And keep it up, please. But at least there is some kind of advice I just wanted to put across that I don't advise whatever happened to the parliament the other time when the police shoot those boys and girls who went there to do whatever they want to do. It's not right. And the police should at least restrain themselves on dealing some other things because these boys were running away. Though we don't encourage them, perhaps what they did to go to the parliament. But of course, these people were running away. When I see that clip, I see that they were running away. Why don't you just chase them and tear gas them the way they normally do? So at least that they go away so that we could not kill many people. So keep it up. You are trying to expose some things in the government whereby those people who are in power cannot in any way accept that they are doing wrong.
Okay.
So please keep it up. And any other regime that comes across, please. Because if we release them to go on with whatever they are doing, they can kill many people and innocent people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, I was saying Jeffrey was starting to speak and I was hearing a but. I think, again, there's a generation that says, but did you have to go to parliament? Did you have to go to parliament?
Just to clarify, we had to. We had to go to parliament because we tried every other way. People sent memorandums, people spoke openly, people, in public, fine, we're not justifying the vandalism and all that, but we had to go to parliament. They were voting that day. We wanted our voices heard. We want them to listen to the masses because we tried, using very many other ways, but they did not listen. So let's be very clear. And, anytime we feel there is need to go to parliament to air our grievances, to send our communication, we will occupy parliament because that is our building. Those people who are there are representing us. Where do we find them? Where do we go, seriously, if you want to send a message to parliament? You go to parliament and you tell them, listen, out of all the parliamentarians, only one came to meet the people. Where were the others? 300 plus. So the people are there coming to talk to you, to tell you 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is what you do. You shoot and you kill them. So just to clarify that, and there was nothing wrong with, sharing your memorandum or to air your views. But I hope that...
It should be enough that
it should be
you
enough.
Share your memorandum and you're heard. But when you're not heard, the question becomes then what next?
Exactly.
And I'm hoping that lessons have been learned from last year, that we're not going to see a repeat of the same this year because we have a government that is listening. That is... me living in a utopian world, I am hoping that we have a government that is listening. There was a communique that I'll refer to that was sent last night regarding Finance Bill 2025. I'll share that a little bit later. But Hussein, I want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing and continue to do, and for taking the time to come and speak to us. I know it's incredibly heavy work, it's difficult work, but it is necessary work, and I am so thankful. Asante sana for coming and for being a fixer. You are definitely one.
You really are
so
like if you're looking at Kenya's big five. I'm just like,
for sure.
You're up there. But yeah, as Mariam said, we really appreciate you. All the best as you travel today. I know it's going to be another heavy day, but yeah, she's wrapped it up really well. So I guess we'll go to the break. Yeah.
When we're back, Ogopa was up. We'll be speaking with Mercy Mutemi on tech labor and, of course, how to navigate the digital space, scams here, there, the legal confines within which we exist on the internet. Are you aware that they are there? It's not, you can't just do and say anything on WhatsApp or on the internet in general. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Ogopa, what's up? Internet red flags after the break.